So let's talk about boundaries, how to do them and why they're needed, especially after affairs, but in all relationships. Um, a boundary is a system of protecting our limits, our wants, our needs, and it's a way of communicating to people what we uh, deem as acceptable behavior. So to start off with, you might say, why might I need a boundary? Why might I need a boundary? Well, I want you to start thinking about boundaries when you are having the experience of feeling like you're not important, you're repeatedly upset about something, and specifically if you're finding a behavior unacceptable. So if you're talking to your therapist about it, your coach, you're whining and complaining to your friends about something over, especially if it's repeat, especially if it's repetitive over and over, you might want to think about, hey, it might be time to set a boundary with this person. So when behavior becomes unacceptable, that's when we want to set a boundary. And I'll add a second part to that. When behavior becomes unacceptable and you are ready to put a consequence in place. Don't be thinking about setting boundaries if you're not ready to put a consequence in place, because it won't work. So you're going to have to be willing to do something that you haven't done before if you're going to ask them to do something or observe a limit that they haven't done before. Does that make sense? So let's talk about, we've got some real examples that people have shared. And and let's talk about how you do it first, now that you know when you would do it. So the steps are easy. Executing them can be challenging because all our fear of loss, our fear that they'll leave, our fear of appearing, like we're mean, um, can really come up around boundaries. So the steps are super simple, but the inner work that it takes to get over what might be stopping you from setting these boundaries can really be intense. So let's the example I want to use is one that someone shared with me that most of you heard about. Her husband had an affair, and as she was going out and doing her monthly, I think, gathering it was with her girlfriends, he was doing several behaviors that were really annoying to her. And I think, as I recall, this was not the first time that he did the behaviors. And so the first thing that we often have to do with boundaries is sometimes people come and ready to set a boundary and they're annoyed about several different things. And we've got to pick the one thing in that situation, that the thing that really bothers us. So this is a great example. So this person shared, and I'm just reading the notes I'm reading the notes that she gave. She was going out with her friends, out to the bars, I think, having fun with her girlfriends. And she started out by saying, I need to set a boundary because he calls me too much. He calls and interrupts my time there. And then as she went on, she was sharing that, you know what? And then he's texting me saying, where are you? Where are you now? As they were moving from place to place, where are you? She's like, and that's really annoying. And I'm like, okay, great. We can set a boundary about that. And then she went on to say, and then when I get home, he gives me the cold shoulder for days. Ouch, right? So what can really mess up boundaries and get them very foggy and confused and ineffective is if we show up to set a boundary with a laundry list. And as you get better at doing it, that's fine. You can take things one by one. But in the beginning, when this is new for you, so the first thing I want you to do, and if I were coaching here and she were here, I would say, and I did ask her, is pick the one thing that's bothering you the most. Start with the most upsetting thing. And she did. So she said, giving her the cold shoulder, right? So this is super important that we narrow it down. So now that we've got it narrowed down and really clear, I want you to, then your step is to write in one sentence the behavior. So it's that my husband gives me the cold shoulder for days after I go out with my girlfriends. Okay, super clear, right? So that now let's plug it in to the 3 steps for setting a boundary. And step 1 is to simply state, in the past, when you, so you could be really specific on this too. You could say last Saturday. So we want to be super specific. So in this case, it was last Saturday. So it's like last Saturday when you gave me the cold shoulder on, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. You can add a feeling in here. It's optional. You can say, that felt really bad. But to leave the feeling out of it, I'm just trying to make it as simple as possible. So it's like, when you gave me the cold shoulder, last week when I went out with my girlfriend. So that's number 1, is just to state the behavior again in one sentence, or else it becomes a complaint session. And guess what happens when we're wah, 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 they tune out. Okay, so then the next step is, I need you to, or I prefer you to. So before you state this one, you've got to get clear, like, is this a preference? Like, it'd be okay if they didn't do it? Or is this a need? A need means you really set a strong consequence for it. So you've got to get clear, is this a need or a preference? And then you choose the appropriate word. So in this case, I'm going to say need. I need you is step 2. I need you to talk to me. I need you to talk to me and share what you're feeling and what you want. That's the only thing that creates real intimacy in a relationship anyway. And if you choose not to, is step 3. If you choose not to, I will. And then we've got to get creative here. And this is obviously, we want to think this through. And ideally, I have people, if it's the first time they've ever done it, write these things down before you ever sit down to talk to someone. Please never, ever text these. This is either a phone call or a face-to-face conversation. I guess there are some exceptions. There are some people who'd have very good reasons to not be at all talking to their partner. So I guess I'll make an exception to that. But especially if you want to preserve your relationship, which I know this person is working to try to save from marriage. So if you're working to preserve it face to face, or at the very minimum on a phone call. So write these things out. So let's think about this. Now, I didn't work through this with her, but I'm going to get creative. So if you choose not to talk to me, I will. Now, I like to have step 3 have 1 or 2 different levels to it. And the first level is me giving you a chance, me giving you a benefit of the doubt that you're going to perhaps do this. Okay, so she could say, if you choose not to, I will ask you again. Hey, I really need you to talk to me and not just shut down and give me the cold shoulder. That's very painful. Or she could say, I need you to move out of the bedroom, or she could give level 1, and then if he doesn't do it, because I like to give people a chance. Sometimes even people who've had affairs will step up with just the first level, just the first level. But be ready to have that second level if they choose not to. So if you choose not to talk to me, I'm going to ask you to move out of the bedroom. I think this person is actually separated from her husband. So I'm going to ask you to not be in contact with me for a week. I don't know, but you get the idea. We get creative here on this one. And again, you want to have it all put together and written down, especially if you're new at boundaries, because this is very challenging. This is not natural. Unfortunately, most of us came from homes where boundaries were not taught. Boundaries were either too loose and other people trampled on your boundaries, or they were too firm and rigid, like where I grew up, and it was like run like the military, and so you never had any option to set a boundary with them. right? So most of us did not come from homes where people were really good at setting boundaries. It's very misunderstood. So let's put this all together in a one single communication. Once you've done the work, so you've got to have done the work to write it down, it would sound like this, setting the boundary. Get on the phone with your husband and say, hey, last week after I went out with my girlfriends, you did something you've done in the past. You gave me the cold shoulder and shut down and didn't talk to me. I really need you to share your feelings and what's going on with me. I need you to do that. And if you choose not to, I'm going to ask you to move out of the bedroom. I'm going to ask you to not have contact with me for the next week. Okay? You're getting the idea of this? So try it. Let me know how it goes. And keep the faith.